Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses. Those words would haunt Officer Martinez for the rest of his life. Judge Katherine Williams approached the courthouse in her civilian clothes, a briefcase containing today's case files. Another ghetto rat trying to sneak in. Harris blocked her path, sneering down at her with pure contempt. His open palm cracked against her face so hard her head snapped sideways. The expensive briefcase flew from her grip, legal documents scattering like confetti across the courthouse steps. Harris grabbed her by the throat, slamming her back against the stone wall. Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses. He twisted her arms behind her back, metal handcuffs biting into her wrists. Other officers gathered around, laughing and recording with their phones. Catherine's jaw throbbed, but her eyes stayed locked on the bronze name plate above the courthouse entrance. The Honorable Judge K. Williams presiding, 20 feet away from her own courtroom, being brutalized by the very system she served. Have you ever seen instant karma this brutal? Inside, Officer Martin Harris straightened his uniform and cleared his throat. He had done this dance many times before: spin the story, control the narrative, cast himself as the hero. The system believed cops over criminals, especially when those criminals looked like her. Your Honor, Harris began, his voice steady and practiced. I was conducting routine security protocols when I encountered a suspicious individual attempting to breach courthouse security. He gestured toward Katherine, now sitting in handcuffs at the defendant's table, a purple bruise blooming across her left cheek. The defendant was acting erratically, refusing to provide identification, and became increasingly agitated when asked to comply with standard procedures. The temporary judge, Judge Harold Bennett, a pale, thin man in his 60s, nodded. And what exactly did you observe, Officer Harris? She was dressed inappropriately for court proceedings, carrying what appeared to be stolen legal documents. Harris warmed to his fabrication. When I approached, she became verbally aggressive, used profanity, and made threats. From the gallery, two officers, Officer Robert Dawson and Officer Thomas Reed, exchanged knowing looks. Same script, different face. She kept screaming about being someone important, Harris continued, voice dripping with disdain. These people always claim to be lawyers, judges, senators, anything to avoid accountability. I've seen this playbook before, Your Honor. Bennett leaned forward. Did she attempt to flee or resist? Absolutely. She became physically combative. I used the minimum necessary force to ensure public safety. The stenographer's keys clicked. A young law clerk frowned, something nagging at her memory. Officer Dawson, the prosecutor, Sarah Walker, called. Can you corroborate? Yes, ma'am, Dawson said crisply. I witnessed the entire incident. The defendant tried to circumvent security. Officer Harris handled it with remarkable professionalism. And the alleged assault? Bennett asked. I used only the force necessary, Harris said through clenched jaw. Any injuries resulted from her own resistance. He produced a phone video that conveniently began mid-confrontation. My body cam malfunctioned, he added smoothly. How convenient, Katherine murmured. Walker nodded sympathetically. In your 15 years of service, Officer Harris, have you seen similar situations? Unfortunately, some individuals believe they're above the law and use accusations of racism to deflect from their crimes. Heads in the gallery nodded along to the familiar narrative. The state recommends charges of trespassing, resisting arrest, and assault on a police officer, Walker concluded. The defendant may now speak, Judge Bennett said, expecting a formality before sentencing. Katherine rose, handcuffs clinking softly, dignity unmistakable despite the bruise. Thank you, Your Honor. First, several factual inaccuracies. I was walking on a public sidewalk approaching the main entrance at approximately 8:47 a.m. Traditional public forum. The stenographer hesitated, the prosecutor frowned. As for the suspicious documents, they're authentic legal materials, pending case files, judicial memoranda, administrative correspondence, access I hold in my professional capacity. Professional capacity? Bennett said. What exactly is your profession, Miss Williams? she said softly. Dr. Williams. We'll get to my background shortly. She continued, calm and utterly comfortable in a courtroom. As to profanity or aggression, I invoke my Fifth Amendment right regarding any alleged statements, but any words I spoke were in direct response to being physically assaulted without provocation. The young law clerk sat up straighter, recognition dawning. Regarding the body cam malfunction, Katherine said, steel entering her tone, this courthouse maintains extensive security coverage, high-definition cameras at intervals along the main approach. The county also backs up all officer body cam footage to cloud storage regardless of device failures. I request a preservation order for all surveillance from 8:45 to 9:15 a.m., including courthouse cameras, body cam backups, and any mobile recordings by officers. Objection, Walker snapped. She cannot make evidentiary demands without counsel. Pro se defendants have the constitutional right to present evidence, Katherine replied, and the prosecution must preserve exculpatory material. Judge Bennett studied her. Miss Williams, do you have legal training? I have some experience, she said, eyes glinting. And I have documentation to establish my identity and purpose here, my judicial parking pass, my access card, my official identification. The bailiff, Henry Sinclair, went still, recognition spreading over his face. He'd seen this woman for years. I believe, Katherine said quietly, raising a leather credential wallet whose gold seal caught the light, there has been a significant misunderstanding about who Officer Harris assaulted this morning. Bennett stared at the seal, then at her face, then at Sinclair, who nodded grimly. Court will recess for 15 minutes, he rasped. In the holding room, Sinclair whispered, Judge Williams. Jesus. I'm so sorry. It's all right, Mr. Sinclair, Katherine said. Bring my robes, the black with gold trim, and my ceremonial gavel. The engraved one. When he rushed out, Katherine called the administrative head of the district. Margaret, she said into the phone, it's Katherine. I need immediate preservation and secure duplication of all surveillance from 8:45 to 9:15. And pull every case Martin Harris has testified in over 5 years. All of them. Chief Judge Margaret Caldwell didn't ask questions. Consider it done. Katherine slipped into the robes that had been her armor for decades, the weight of authority settling over her shoulders. When the courtroom reconvened, Sinclair's voice thundered, All rise. The Honorable Judge Katherine Williams presiding. A gasp rippled through the gallery. Harris went rigid. Bennett blanched and fled. Katherine took her seat behind the bench, and regarded the room with calm, surgical focus. Officer Harris, she said evenly, remained standing. His legs trembled. Approximately 2 hours ago you testified under oath. You said, these people always claim to be lawyers, judges, senators. Anything to avoid accountability. You said people like me must learn that actions have consequences. Let's review the evidence. She placed a tablet on the bench, turning the screen outward. Crystal clear footage filled the courtroom, Harris blocking her path. His voice, contemptuous and recorded for all to hear, another ghetto rat trying to sneak in. The slap. The choking grip. The cuffs. Filthy animals like you belong in cages. Audible gasps. Do you see any verbal aggression from the defendant in this footage? Katherine asked. Silence. Harris swallowed. And here, she said, swiping, is your own body cam backup, automatically uploaded every 60 seconds. His voice snarled from the speakers, look at this uppity, thinking she can walk into my courthouse. Time to teach a lesson. The prosecutor's papers fluttered as Sarah Walker tried to disappear behind the counsel table. Dawson. Read, Katherine called. You swore Harris acted with remarkable professionalism. Do you wish to revise? They edged toward the exit. Officer Harris, Katherine said, setting the tablet down, you demanded employment verification. The seal behind me. The nameplate on this bench. The oil painting in the lobby. I've presided in this courthouse for 23 years. Harris's whisper scraped the air. Your Honor, I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't look, she said. You saw a black woman and decided you were entitled to abuse her. And there is something else you didn't know. For 6 months I have been working with the FBI's Civil Rights Division, the State Attorney General, and the Department of Justice to investigate patterns of misconduct and racial bias in this department. You've been under investigation. Today you handed us perfect evidence. The gavel fell once. Court will recess while I consider appropriate charges. Harris collapsed into a chair. When court resumed, the roles had reversed. Harris sat in the defendant's chair, his attorney, Michael Clark, pale and sweating. Katherine addressed the packed gallery. My name is Judge Katherine Williams. I was appointed in 2001 and unanimously confirmed by the state Senate. I graduated magna cum laude from Harvard Law School, where I served on the Law Review. I spent 8 years as a federal prosecutor in the Civil Rights Division, specializing in police misconduct. I successfully prosecuted 47 cases against officers who abused their authority. In 23 years on this bench, I've presided over more than 15,000 cases. She lifted a thick file. This contains records of every case in which Martin Harris has testified over 5 years, 43 in total. 28 involved defendants of color. Harris personally made the arrest in 26. The language repeats: acting erratically, refusing to comply, threatening officer safety. The same script. She placed a chart on an easel. Over 15 years, Harris made over 1,000 arrests. 87% involved people of color, though his patrol area is 42% white, 31% Hispanic, and 27% black. He used physical force in 63% of arrests involving people of color, but only 12% involving white suspects. Of the 1,089 arrests of people of color, 432 cases were dismissed for lack of evidence, prosecutorial misconduct, or constitutional violations, nearly 40%. She looked at Harris. We call that a pattern. Your Honor, Harris croaked, I was just doing my job. She read from his oath, to faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of my office. She set the document down. Faithfully and impartially, not selectively, not with prejudice. This isn't one rogue officer, she told the room. It's a system that protects officers like Harris, dismisses complaints, pays settlements, and allows abuse to continue until today. She raised her gavel. Your place, Officer Harris, is in the defendant's chair, facing the consequences of 15 years of criminal behavior. The gavel cracked like thunder. She turned back to the bench to deliver judgment. For 15 years, you violated the constitutional rights of citizens whose only crime was existing while black or brown. Your greatest mistake was believing the system would always protect you. Harris began to sob. I'm sorry, he whispered. I never meant. Your apology is 15 years and 47 complaints too late, Katherine said. Today I deliver justice not only for myself, but for every grandmother you demeaned, every teenager you framed, every doctor you arrested outside his own home because you could not imagine he lived there. Based on the evidence, including your own recorded statements and body cam backup, I find you guilty of assault in the first degree, guilty of assault on a judicial officer, guilty of deprivation of civil rights under color of law, and guilty of perjury for false testimony given under oath in this courtroom. The words rang like bells. You are hereby sentenced to the maximum penalty allowed, 25 years in federal prison without parole. Harris collapsed, sobbing. Katherine wasn't finished. I order a federal investigation into every case you touched, every arrest you made, and every complaint filed against you. The victims you silenced for 15 years will have their day in court. 6 months later, the ripples had become waves. Harris served his time in protective custody, stripped of badge and pension. A federal probe revealed corruption in the department's command structure. 12 officers were terminated, 4 supervisors were criminally charged, the department was placed under federal oversight. Chief Judge Margaret Caldwell instituted protocols requiring automatic federal review of cases involving alleged misconduct against judicial personnel. Body cams became truly mandatory, with redundant backups that could never be malfunctioned away. Most importantly, the 432 tainted cases were reopened. Dozens of wrongfully convicted defendants were released, Hundreds saw charges dropped or sentences reduced. The county paid an additional $8.7 million in compensation, funds taken directly from the department's budget. Community oversight boards were established. Training was overhauled with curricula Katherine helped design on constitutional rights and implicit bias. The young law clerk from that day chose civil rights litigation and now fights in courtrooms across the country. Dawson and Reed were terminated and later faced federal charges for conspiracy and obstruction. Their recorded laughter while watching a judge be brutalized became evidence in academies nationwide of institutional rot. Footage of Judge Williams's verdict reached tens of millions, giving voice to those who had never seen public accountability rendered so clearly. Outside the courthouse, renamed the Justice Williams Federal Courthouse, a bronze plaque bears a single line, "Here, justice finally found its voice." And in a cell miles away, Martin Harris sits with the echo of his own words, "Actions have consequences," finally learning what they truly mean. Sometimes justice doesn't just wear a blindfold. Sometimes she wears robes, carries a gavel, and when the moment is right, she hits back. Never underestimate the power of standing up to bullies. Share this story if you believe everyone deserves justice, regardless of who they are or what they look like. Truth always finds its way.